Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in the last tutorial we created this little web application which just has a very simple form, and the contents of the form, just one text field here, gets submitted to our controller servlet when you click OK. And the controller servlet has a do-get method that handles the information that's submitted from that form. Now in this tutorial I just want to talk about posts rather than gets, which are a extremely important topic and one of the basic building blocks of web applications. So if I go to my form here, we can see that the method is set to get, which is actually the default for form, and it's what you get if you didn't specify a method as well. And if you use a get, what happens is, let's just run the form here. If I submit this form, then actually you can't see it. Oh, here we go. In the URL, what will happen is the parameters in the form, like the actual data, will be submitted basically via the URL. And so, like you can see here at the end of the URL, there you can just see that it says after the URL with controller on the end of it, it says !, user equals Joe. So the results of submitting that form are exactly like just going to that URL and typing these parameters yourself. And that's not very satisfactory, partly because it's very easy for people to mess about with that and type in funny parameters for the hell of it, or to try to hack into your web application. But it's also like there's a limit to how much data you can submit via parameters, and the parameters on the URL just look ugly. And they're also subject to escaping, because if they've got spaces in or something, then that will be transformed with % signs when it's submitted. So gets are not really that satisfactory for forms. They're more useful for creating URLs that you click on and that have IDs in them and that sort of thing. So what you can do though is pretty simple. If you change the method of your form to post, and then go to your, if you have a servlet that receives the results of submitting that form, in your servlet you need to then handle the form using the do post method. So we've got this do get method here that I created in the last tutorial, and let's just put some text in here. So user via get, and now I'm just going to copy that. I'm literally going to take the exact same stuff but paste it into this do get method, which looks exactly like into the do post method, which looks exactly like the do get method, except that it's called do post. And let's just put some text in here, so I can say user via post. So we'll know which method is called, because one says user via get and the other is user via post. And let's go to the form here. So I've changed the method there, and now I'm just going to run the form. So I'm just going to click run, and here we go. So there's my form, and now let's just, so if I do view source on this form, we'll see that, oh, it has actually updated it, because often it doesn't. And if your HTML is not what you expect, you should always try clicking this refresh button just to be sure. And then let's submit some data here. So let's just pick a random name, say Ruth, which was my aunt's name actually. Now click OK, and you can see that the controller's got the data, but the do post method has been invoked, not do get. So it's invoked this method here, and it says this. And the other important thing is it hasn't used the URL to submit that data, so it's done an HTTP post, not an HTTP get, because a get is the kind of request that you have if you go to a URL. And it basically sends that data via some way that actually I don't fully understand, but it's kind of like some kind of stream that's open between the client, the browser, and the server. So it's a bit more secure, and you don't have the limits on the amount of data you can send that you do with a URL. So in general, in a nutshell, when you submit data from a form, always change the method to post, unless you really want people to be able to send the same data via parameters in the URL. and be aware that you have to handle it via do post in your controller servlet, or the servlet that it's submitted to. But if you we're going to look shortly at submitting data to other JSPs, which kind of breaks the Model 1 architecture, but it's a very common thing to do. And when you handle this data in a JSP, there's no difference between get and post from the point of view of the JSP that handles the data. But don't worry about that now, because we're going to look at that in a future tutorial. So that's all for this time, and until next time, happy coding.